news team consisting of Kerry Ann and Nicole, we will be presenting you with health topics that you should know about. Today we'll be introducing you to a lovely remote community and the issues that surround the retention and recruitment of health professionals in this region. Tennant Creek is a town located approximately 510 kilometres north of Alice Springs and 670 kilometres south of Katherine in the Northern Territory. It is part of the Greater Barkly region, which spans roughly 300,000 square kilometres and consists mainly of open grassy plains with scattered cattle stations, mines and Indigenous communities. Tennant Creek is classified as ASGCRA5 Very Remote, using the Australian Standard Geographical Classification Remoteness Area System. The township Tennant Creek was declared in 1934 amidst Australia's gold rush era, with rich deposits of gold being the driving force behind Tennant Creek's economy. Tennant Creek continues to mine rich deposits of silver, gold and copper, with the Greater Barkly region also well known for its cattle farming. Tennant Creek's population at the 2011 census was 3,061, with a median age of 32, growing 15% from 2001 to 2011. Tennant Creek has a strong Aboriginal culture, with 52% of the population being Indigenous at the 2011 census. The traditional owners are the Warramuggu people, with the main Aboriginal languages spoken being Warramuggu and Walpuri, along with many other Aboriginal languages. Many Aboriginal people speak many different languages, with English being the third or fourth language, and over 50% of the population over 15 years speaking a language other than English at home. The Tennant Creek Township consists of one primary school, 2 high schools, 2 daycare facilities, a large supermarket, post office, gymnasium, town swimming pool, library, several pubs and clubs and restaurants. Tourist attractions include Lake Marianne Dam, Miki Nunu Cultural Centre and Devil's Marbles. The top 5 industries of employment in 2011 in order were public administration and safety, healthcare and social assistance, education and training, wholesale or retail trade and construction, with 14% of the population employed in healthcare and social assistance. Of the Indigenous community, the prominent professions included public administration and safety, with 34%, followed by healthcare and social assistance, with 16%. The health services available include Tennant Creek Hospital, which serves the township as well as the surrounding area of approximately 240,000 square kilometres. The Tennant Creek Hospital consists of 20 beds with its main focus on assessment, diagnosis and treatment of short-term illnesses and injuries, as well as an 8-chair renal unit to service the entire Barkly region. Working with the hospital is Anangini, a community-controlled Aboriginal health organisation, or AHAC, which provides primary health care services to the people of Tennant Creek and the surrounding Barkly region. Anangini creates a holistic approach to health, ensuring physical and emotional health and well-being, with the central objective to relieve poverty, sickness, helplessness, serious social and economic disadvantage and social distress affecting the Aboriginal population. I will now hand you over to Kerry Ann, who will discuss the major issues affecting the retention and recruitment of health professionals in the Tennant Creek region.
Thank you, Larissa. The Services for Australian Rural and Remote Allied Health, SARA, has identified several practice, professional and personal challenges for an allied health professional working in a rural and remote setting. These challenges impact recruitment and retention of the allied health workforce in a way that differs from metropolitan areas. However, SARA stresses that while these challenges are particularly confronting for new recruits, they will not be experienced by all allied health professionals and are instead dependent on the individual and the context of their work. These issues include practice, professional, opportunities for growth, personal, work-life balance and financial issues. In terms of practice challenges, the working environment of an allied health professional in a rural and remote area is generally very different to that of the metropolitan experience. The difference is further compounded for a community like Tennant Creek, in which the majority of the population is Indigenous, low income and generally recognised as low socio-economic. Culture shock is cited as a common reason for the high turnover of staff in remote Indigenous communities. This may be amplified by the provision of health services to a largely Indigenous and culturally and linguistically diverse population. Challenges in communication can include the phenomenon of gratuitous concurrence. This is a characteristic of Indigenous communication in which the Indigenous person has a tendency to agree or say what they think the authority figure wants them to say. For some allied health professionals, the clinical diversity of patients and caseloads can present an opportunity to provide care over a broad range of areas and develop into a specialist generalist. However, for other allied health professionals, such as public dentists, the limited range of treatment options permitted in the public system can be a source of frustration, knowing that better clinical treatment options would be available could the patient access and afford private dental care in a larger town or metropolitan area. For the people of Tennant Creek and the Barkly, that can be a 1,000-kilometre round trip to Alice Springs. Another challenge to practising in rural and remote areas can be the unconventional service delivery modes, such as outreach services. Under agreement with the Northern Territory Department of Health, AHAC provides primary healthcare services to the surrounding 12 outstations within a 100-kilometre radius of Tennant Creek. This roving clinic improves access to healthcare for those patients who live remotely and are unable to visit the clinic in Tennant Creek. Other practice challenges identified by Sarah that impact on recruitment and retention include reduced opportunity for same profession line management, which can cause lack of management support due to limited understanding of that allied health service, lower quality or substandard resources and clinical facilities, as well as outdated IT and communication systems. The need to garner community trust with community engagement poses a greater challenge in rural remote areas compared with metropolitan areas. In terms of professional challenges, a significant professional challenge for dentists operating in rural remote areas employed in the public system is the real and perceived risk of being de-skilled. The treatment options in the public dental system are limited, and a full-time public dentist is unable to utilise the complete breadth of their clinical skills in a public practice. The Northern Territory Government provides an allowance to offset the difference between public and private sector salaries, the private practice allowance, and while this may assist with recruiting dentists, this monetary compensation may not be enough to encourage newly graduated dentists from committing to a longer than short-term career in oral health, giving that fear of de-skilling and thus inability to re-enter the metropolitan private sector due to rural stigma. Other professional issues related to practice in rural remote areas include professional isolation due to limited access to professional networks, unrealistic expectations due to insufficient preparation for rural and remote work, including poor or absent induction programs, lack of representation of rural and remote allied health professionals in professional organisations, difficulty of complying with confidentiality in a small township, and the challenge of making training relevant to the rural and remote context, which basically highlights the lack of evidence-based research. Opportunities for career growth in rural and remote contexts can present barriers to recruitment and retention of allied health professionals. These challenges can include lack of support, including mentoring and access to clinical supervision, difficulty in accessing CPD and other professional development opportunities, particularly if an absence is not possible due to staff shortages, and just generally limited opportunities for career development. Personal challenges associated with working in a rural and remote setting include social isolation, including distance from family and friends and lack of social support. This can be compounded because an allied health professional may be reluctant to access counselling services in a township due to perceived challenges with confidentiality. Distance from family, where the health professional is required to take on a care role, for example, for an elderly parent or a disabled sibling. There can be different or a lack of social and cultural facilities in the community. There can be difficulties in obtaining suitable employment for partners or appropriate education facilities for children. Reduced opportunities to continue favourite pastimes may present, including particular sports may not be available or at the level you're accustomed to playing. Further, availability of appropriate accommodation can be a challenge. AHAC describes accommodation as a barrier to attracting and maintaining a health workforce in rural and remote locations. In terms of the work-life balance, the rural lifestyle is a significant attraction to working in a rural or remote community. However, work-life pressures can undermine an allied health professional's opportunity to enjoy their rural lifestyle and so be a major issue in retention of staff. These issues can be attributed to staff shortages and inability to secure locums, potentially leading to longer working hours and high workloads. This may lead to self-care issues and risk burnout. Lack of anonymity and privacy in personal time due to the higher profile of allied health professionals in the community, both professionally and personally, can pose an issue. Financial considerations are also a challenge to the recruitment and retention of allied health professionals. There can be a significant relocation cost involved, and while these expenses can be borne by the employer, the health professional may still be left out of pocket, especially when relocating a family. There can be additional costs involved in living in a rural and remote setting, including the need to invest in suitable personal vehicles. There can also be additional financial burdens associated with travel to visit family and friends. For example, living in Tennant Creek would require a drive to Alice Springs in order to get to the closest airport.
We will now cross over to Nicole, who will discuss some of the programs and incentives that have been implemented in order to retain and recruit health professionals into regions such as Tennant Creek. She will also evaluate their application to regions such as Tennant Creek.
Thank you, Larissa. So it's important to remember that all individuals have the right to health. Inadequate access to healthcare facilities is a breach of the fundamental right, the right to life. The 2009-2010 federal budget acknowledged this right, and the findings of the 2008 Audit of the Health Workforce, announcing a $134.4 million rural health workforce strategy, including a number of new incentives. Due to the very remote locality of Tennant Creek, there were a number of incentives offered to health practitioners. However, the success of these incentives is yet to be evaluated. The World Health Organization has indicated 3 areas that should be addressed by each of these retention and recruitment strategies. These include education and regulatory interventions, indirect and direct compensation, and the management, environment, and social support. In a number of studies, it is indicated that practitioners are more likely to practice in a rural or remote region if they are also of a rural origin. Incentives offered to rural students in Japan proved successful as individuals were highly likely to return to their rural community. The Rural Physician Associate Program in the USA has also demonstrated positive results, but indicates that success is heavily dependent upon the stringent selection process for such incentives. Closer to home, Flinders University also has the local quota program. Northern Territory residents and individuals of Indigenous descent in these programs are 10 times as likely to complete and reside in Northern Territory in their intern year. This suggests that tertiary education incentives, especially for individuals within communities such as Tennant Creek, will promote the recruitment of health practitioners into these regions and potentially increase their retention. This also addresses the first and second strategies outlined by the World Health Organization. The success of financial incentives is often debatable. However, the Friends of Mosswold Scholarship Scheme in South Africa has been successful in the recruitment and retention of hospital staff in their local regions. The scheme not only offers financial assistance, but students are also supported with constant mentoring from the management of the hospital intending to employ them. This includes regular contact with the undergraduate student as well as peer support during their integration into the workforce. Of the 24 students who had accepted the scholarship, 18 worked in the district that supported them. This could plausibly be implemented in a community such as Tennant Creek, as it boasts support through education, financial compensation, as well as through the integration into the remote region. This also affirms all three of the strategies outlined by the World Health Organization. Compulsory placement in rural and remote communities is often controversial, as it is not a solution to the recruitment and retention rates. It may also discourage individuals from pursuing a health career. Unfortunately, this only addresses the retention and recruitment problems in the immediate future. However, it is not a sustainable practice. A South African study has also indicated that inexperienced health professionals are often forced to treat patients beyond their scope of practice. This is a major deterrence as well for people wanting to practice in these regions. Therefore, it may be necessary to ensure that all practitioners at least have access to telehealth facilities where possible to ensure this is minimised. Several surveys of rural health professionals have indicated that there are a number of deterring factors that prove difficult in these regions. Complaints included a lack of professional support, insufficient infrastructure, and inadequate locum relief, as well as academic isolation. Other suggested factors affecting retention rates include limited access to schooling facilities and employment opportunities for family members, as well as the obvious language barriers and varying cultural differences in Indigenous communities that exist. While some of these factors are difficult to address, factors such as inadequate locum relief can be. This would allow professionals to go to CPD lectures and improve their skills. This would also benefit the community, as it would allow the practitioner to confidently expand on their scope of practice.
This concludes today's discussion. As you can clearly see, there are a number of different factors that affect the retention and recruitment of health professionals in regions such as Tennant Creek. Undoubtedly, we are unable to change some of these factors in the foreseeable future, such as geographical isolation of practitioners. However, we have a clear indication of which incentives would be beneficial to this beautiful region. We propose that there are incentives offered to people within the Tennant Creek community to partake in tertiary education programs, and that communication and support from health professionals within the community is upheld throughout their education. We also encourage the improvement of locum relief, as well as access to telehealth facilities, to ensure practitioners are maintaining quality of life and are able to work within and expand on their scope of practice. I'm Larissa Holscher, and thank you for watching.